of Faith and Honest Conversation. I'm Thomas Rowland. This is James. James, I forgot your second name. James Farrand. That's it.
We'll go that
Yeah, we're here to talk about our faith, our experiences of faith, our understanding of it. We're really trying to be as honest as we can. Trying not to say what you should believe, what we or have any judgments or shaming going on, but trying to own what we believe, where we're at, and open up the conversation a bit. So do get in touch if you want to be involved at all. We'd love to interview other people or explore their faith journey on this, or if you just got comments, whatever, do get in touch. We'd love to hear from you, and you can just private message me, Thomas Rowland Counselling Services. So let's get on with it, James. I've waffled a bit. James, I was aware that we've just had Easter weekend.
Yeah.
And I thought, we've both talked about how we've struggled with Christian beliefs or our Christian heritage that we were brought up in, and we've kind of moved from a place of order to disorder a bit more, and finding some sort of reorder occasionally, but I'm also quite happy with the disorder a bit, or with the paradoxes and the tensions and the questions. So yeah, I just wanted to start with asking how you approach Easter now.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'm glad you asked me that. Basically, I think Easter used to mean something slightly different to me, and would be like a time where we'd be like really focused on the death and resurrection of Jesus, and we would look at like the Last Supper, and certainly in part of my faith journey has involved looking a little bit more closely at sort of Passover and what that all means, and why there was the Last Supper and all of this, and what that all signified, and why it was important, and how you've got like the real almost like foreshadowing in the Bible of like Jesus's death and resurrection through the Passover that happens in for the early Israelites when they're in Egypt. So that there's like, it's steeped in like almost like a depth of meaning and legend and like lore and all of this sort of like real richness of history. And I think now I've become less and less focused on that, and it does still hold like a deep meaning for me, Easter. But I suppose that's changed, and I'm not entirely sure where I'm at now with it. But I don't like spend the time really focused on the death and resurrection of Jesus. Not that I don't acknowledge that, but that's not what I spend Easter focusing on. That there's always like a sense that when we were at church and whatnot, people would say he is risen, and you'd respond with he is risen indeed, and so on. And there were like quite a lot of traditions and rote phrases that we'd speak, and I think that there's a part of me that kind of kicks against that, and I don't know why. I haven't really explored enough in myself, I think probably part of it is that it feels quite religious and quite sort of like bound up in tradition and things that for myself I've seen only in it, or the majority of things that I've seen that are connected to that have been in a negative light. So I don't tend to associate myself, or I guess there's an element of like tossing the baby out with the bathwater a little bit, in that I don't kind of like subscribe or ascribe, if you like, to any of the kind of traditions or ways of doing things, that we just do them because we do them. That's because it's the way they are, like the traditions. I feel for me that it kind of speaks of it sort of like taps into an element of control, or how should I put it? I realise I've gone like quite off piste here. It's
No,
not
I
so
love it.
much about Easter,
Yeah.
but certainly about religion, and kind of speaks of a bit of that institutional uh, uh, structure where the power feels unhealthy. Um, Having said that, I do have Easter traditions that I do subscribe to, but they're a little bit like higgledy piggledy, and then like that I'm not like strict about adhering to them. So a couple of friends of mine tried to go up to the top of a tour in Dartmoor on Easter Sunday and watch the sunrise. And they invited us along to go to that this year, which we did. It was absolutely stunning, freezing cold, really, really cold. But there was this kind of weird magical sense of, oh, this is kind of, we're acknowledging that there's something new. We're acknowledging that there's something that we're stepping into new life. We're stepping into spring. We're stepping into like rebirth. We're stepping into a new day, like the fact we're there for sunrise. There was quite a lot of anxiety beforehand, like, are we going to get there in time? We're a bit delayed. Are we going to miss the sunrise and all this sort of stuff, which I think we can get a lot, can really connect with our own lives, the anxiety of change, the anxiety of like time, and how much of a hold it has on us. But even if we'd been late, it was still a beautiful moment. We saw deer, we saw like pheasants, so many pheasants, unreal. They make a very annoying, noisy noise, but it's very appropriate to Dartmoor. And so when we're there, when we're in the moment, and we were just stood up there, biting cold wind, like real bleak landscape. You're up on top of these ancient granite monoliths that have just they look like they've been stacked there by giants, from a time before, and you're just kind of looking at this clear, beautiful sky with just the sun, like the light of the sun just kind of warming the horizon, and then this sudden light switch moment as the light comes on, and there's something unbelievably spiritual, unbelievably magical and mystical about the whole experience that you just think, oh, I'm so glad we do that. So glad we do that. So there are certainly sort of traditions, things that I involve myself in. Easter egg hunts. I know Easter eggs aren't traditionally part of like the church, but I quite like that. I love a bit of chocolate. And it's interesting, like I've had people describe me, how like the reason Easter eggs are hollow is to represent the empty tomb, and that's because Jesus is risen. And I'm like, oh, I quite like that. It's quite like probably not the reason they're hollow, probably because like that amount of chocolate would kill any normal human being. But it's a nice idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I suppose that's where I'm at with Easter. It's as I say, higgledy piggledy. We do an Easter egg hunt for my nephews, and they absolutely love it. And it's just fascinating, fascinating watching them, and like knowing that they don't really understand the whole, like I'm sure Easter eggs don't actually have anything to do with the Christian faith. I'm sure they've come in from somewhere else, and it's sort of more to do with like maybe a bit more of a pagan or druidic ceremonies of new life and rebirth and stuff like that. But parallels, right? I'm all for the parallels.
I've got no idea where the Easter egg comes from.
No.
I'm not even gonna attempt to say that, but maybe it started off with eggs. Maybe they free chocolate. I don't know.
Yeah.
I remember we always had a boiled egg for breakfast on Easter Sunday, which was lovely. And then it just became every Sunday because we love boiled eggs. So I don't know if it's to do with anything or not. James, I want to pick up on two things there, if that's okay. One was where you started was with the traditions of church, And I had in mind, oh, is James think like, is it that they're empty? But then you went to that they feel controlling, or coercive, or
Yeah,
authority,
yeah,
kind of these
yeah. So
unhelpful authority structures. I wonder if you could explore that a
yeah,
bit more.
absolutely. So yeah, yeah. To a larger, to a greater extent, they do feel empty, and but because they are like, there's a sense of feeling empty to them, but we do them anyway. That's sort of why it is rooted. So it's totally connected to them feeling like they don't really have any meaning or depth or any, like I can see that they do, or that they did, or maybe once upon a time that was a really special thing to do. For me, not so much, I guess that, like, I've never, I say never, it's been rare for me to connect to liturgy or to things that are spoken and then spoken back, and then like a reader response scenario, which is common in certain denominations, and I can see that for some people that's really does have a real deep spiritual feeling, but for me it's never really clicked. And also that there is a sense there of like, that whole group think, or like, we mustn't deviate from this way of doing things, because like out there lies darkness and hell and
Okay.
hellfire and demons and stuff like that. We must
Yeah.
stick to this narrow path that only we know of, and so if by doing that
Mm.
we will have the truth. And so that there is an element of that, of this sense that of fear, that it's rooted in the fear of the unknown, of the fear of the outside,
Mm.
but it manifests itself in all of these very kind of um, innocuous little things, innocuous little traditions and ways of doing things, which I think in with regards to my sort of deconstruction of faith, I've kind of gone, nah, don't need any of those. Let's get rid of them all. Um, so yeah, I mean, it kind of like it's funny. It kind of can links in a little bit with a bunch of other traditions and a bunch of other sort of like things that are like common or normal, if you like, in a Christian household, or a particular brand of Christian household, maybe I should say. Yeah.
Like these are the things that we do to be good Christians.
Yeah, that's it. If we don't do this, there's a little niggling sense of, well, if you don't do it, then what if, or like
Right.
the whole
Yeah.
Uncle George scenario, do
Yeah.
these things and God will smile on you. If you
Yeah.
don't,
Okay. Yeah.
we don't talk about it, but that's like,
Yeah.
that's the
So
implication
it's
of
not
that.
just empty, is it? It's got that tinge of
Mm,
hell in the
that's it.
background,
There were
or tinge of
roots in
condemnation.
fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it feels like it's got roots in fear.
It's interesting. You see, I have a
Mm,
different experience to it.
mm,
I have a real different experience to it that,
yeah.
although I just saw that you had a moment then, so I don't know whether I should go back
Mhm.
to that, but
No, it's good. Yeah, it's just
I, yeah, I'll come back
yeah,
and
no,
give you an
go on.
opportunity. But I was thinking this Easter, so at the moment we kind of, I'm not really in a church, rooted in a church. Part of that is lockdown.
Mhm.
Part of that is that lockdown has been convenient to kind of separate from church and then reassess, kind of thing, and refeel.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
and that's been really helpful. But one thing I really missed was all those traditions this weekend.
yeah,
And I think for me, I love liturgy. I'm very different to you,
yeah.
but I think I was brought up in a quite an anti-liturgy kind of tradition.
Mm,
So these things aren't part of my past so much,
yeah, yeah,
and I just find them really helpful as, um, and I think the whole weekend is. I think what I'm missing is that moments of sacredness,
mm,
and I think Good Friday and Easter Sunday had moments of sacredness that were
mm.
kind of built into what I feel were built into the liturgy or the traditions.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
And there were times when we could actually, like, I don't know, there was this sense that we were approaching something a bit more important than usual, or a
Yeah.
lot more important, that was
Yeah.
really crucial. And it's like your whole, for me, I think my whole, like, my gut then became attuned to something
Mm.
more. Um, and Good Friday was basically like a normal Sunday for me, and a
Mm.
normal Sunday in the sense that it was set apart as a very quiet day, set apart from
Mm.
most other things. And then Easter Sunday
Mm.
was this celebration, and there was something about that kind of. I remember one of my, I think probably my first, what you could call a spiritual moment, or you could just call it an emotional fix. I'm
Mm.
never quite sure, but you hold those things, don't you? Is I must have been quite young, maybe 10, maybe a bit under, I'm not sure.
Mm.
And our church was quite small, so we were just, and we hired a church hall, so um, so on, which we couldn't hire during the holidays.
Mm.
So we ended up packing out somebody's back room, their living room, and singing. Most of them were a lot older than me, obviously, and singing. Um, oh, it's gone. Why has it gone? When I survey,
Oh yes. Yeah. Yeah.
when I survey, and just feeling something like so profound. I think in that,
Mm.
and I think I miss that togetherness in sacredness,
Mm.
and that set apart time and approach to something sacred, I think.
Yeah.
And for me, those rituals build into that it's kind of
Yeah.
geared to push you, or to kind of not push you, but like, I don't know, to kind of gather you into that place
Yeah.
of
Draw you
approach.
back to it. Yeah. Yeah. I
Um,
love that. I love that. Mm.
but it would, um, but I get what you're saying, I guess.
Mhm.
And I know, I feel like sometimes, I feel like often in your, in spiritual growth, you kind of go away from your own tradition to something else that you now find much more helpful in some way. Um,
I think it is interesting because, sorry, I'm just going to put the light on. It's getting very, very dark. Yeah, I loved what you were saying. I don't actually have a background in sort of like a liturgical sort of
mm,
denomination or anything like that. It's just that when I have sat through liturgy or I've been involved in liturgy or anything like that, I haven't connected to it. And so like it's sort of like kind of bypassed me.
yeah,
But I absolutely love what you're saying, and I think that what you've got there is the essence, the true essence of what those rituals and those traditions are hasn't been lost, and that you've connected to what hasn't been lost. It's still there as like a let's remember why we're here. Let's remember what we're doing,
mm,
um, as opposed to where I'm now at, where it's sort of like the either the repetitiveness or the I guess really it's a little bit like you having your boiled eggs on Easter
yeah,
Sunday, and
yeah,
then you do it every Sunday because you like boiled eggs.
yeah,
But then it means that on Easter Sunday, it just feels like a normal Sunday. It
yeah,
feels like a normal day.
yeah,
So it's kind of like because of the tradition is built in, it then doesn't have the same impact.
yeah,
Maybe there's part of it like that. I don't know that there's certainly there's stuff that I am much more wary of now, um,
mm,
because of like, and again I guess part of it is it's like it's little things that remind me of the bigger things, which were the hurt and the pain and the power dynamic that wasn't so beneficial or helpful for people or healthy.
mm,
Um, so we've got like a quite an interesting, um, yeah, like place where we've ended up as two individuals. You know, like
Mm.
so for me, the
Mm.
traditions have
Mm.
kind of become less sacred and more representative of the fear and of the
Yeah.
control.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I'm sure that like, and when you're speaking about it, I was thinking, oh wow, that's amazing. That's really good. Like I can see that there's
Mm.
there's still real goodness there. There's still real meaning, real connection, real spirituality. So yeah,
Mm.
it's funny. It's that's yeah, that we come to different places on it.
Yeah.
Mm.
The other thing and I think it'd be good to push this a bit more for us. Really, is
Mm.
like what do we take from Good Friday and Easter? How do we
Mm.
approach it in what it was, if what it is in the Christian tradition? And I wanted to come back to that moment of when you're on the top of the tour and you're seeing
Mm.
sunrise. It sounds like such an amazing moment.
Mm.
You could call a spiritual moment or a
Mm.
transcendental moment. And I'm just wondering, like, how does that connect with Easter, and how does that connect with
Mm.
your spirituality now, or your faith now?
Mm. Yeah, um, I think a big part of it for me is the recognition of um, of of my own smallness. So again, I was out like really late at night about a week ago, and we were out and we were walking and we were looking up at the stars. We were at a beach, and we just had like a little beach fire and stuff, and we were there and we were just staring at the stars. And I said, yeah, they make you feel appropriately small, don't they? And it's just like a lot of, I think a lot of what our faith can do, um, or maybe what religion can do in the Western culture, um, is magnify the importance of the individual to an inappropriate level, so that you feel like every single one of your actions and thoughts has such a huge consequence and a huge um, importance to it, that you can become scared of doing anything. And there's a big part of me knowing that, saying that, knowing that even very small actions by any one of us can have a huge impact. And insofar as like being kind, and it's totally how like where I'm at the moment is the being kind to the other, and the being kind to oneself, like having rippling effects, and effects that we just don't really know or understand. Um, but this sense that we're much smaller and much more fragile than perhaps we're. I don't know. I suppose we are taught to believe that in church and stuff.
I
Yeah.
can I can I can relate to that though.
Mm.
Um, and I'm quite happy with saying that there are um, conflicting things happening in churches,
Yeah.
and in any institution.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you're saying, where it resonated with me was, I had this idea of God kind of always being in the sight of God, always being,
Mm.
um, and that being a really terrifying, burdensome thing. Of
Yeah.
like, oh, I can't even think that, and I can't do that, and do I do that or that? What God's gonna think, and
Yeah.
like, and it kind of enlarged all those things. Like I think, like you're
Mm-hmm.
saying, to kind of this weightier thing than it was,
Mm.
than, um, because half of the decisions didn't really matter, and suddenly all these actions have momentous consequences.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
then momentous consequences for me primarily, but that's made such a big thing because
Mm-hmm.
are you going to be in hell or are you going to go to heaven? Like, that's
Right.
massive. And actually, but at the same time, we are taught to be, to kind of be humble or be,
Yeah.
maybe just be small in many ways.
Mm.
And I think there is that conflicting, that kind of double standard almost, or kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
thing where you, yeah, yeah, and that, and I guess that's what the sacred does for me as well.
Mm.
When I really connect with liturgy or these stories
Mm.
of Jesus dying on the cross and
Mm.
the Easter story, they make me smaller in a really freeing, lovely way, because
Yeah.
it suddenly doesn't matter so much, all of this stuff, and I don't matter so much
Mm.
because I'm part of this bigger story. Um, yeah, and I wonder if that's the same with this moment where you're suddenly, you know, you're you're kind of part of nature, aren't you? Again,
Mm.
in these moments of
Yeah.
connection to nature, and nature, the sun is rising on nature, and it's going to do that whatever you do. you
Yeah.
know
We can't stop it. It's
yeah,
happening and it's amazing. And we're in the midst of a pandemic, but
yeah,
there is still
yeah,
unspeakable beauty in the world. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think that the other side of it is that that being in the eye of God, in being in the sight of God at all times, that I come back to the sense of acceptance and the sense of, in spite of any of my thoughts and my ideas or my concepts on what He thinks and what God is believing about me, there's this deep, unshakable acceptance of me as a being, as part of creation, as part of this like vastness that, like, I just find myself as less than a pinprick of light, just there, and I just think, okay, so there is something there, isn't there? There's something like really marvelous about how we are valued, and yet how in other ways we are so insignificant, and it's
yeah,
just this real. I don't even see it as a tension. It's like it kind of makes sense. It kind of all fits because we're vitally um, loved and vitally accepted, and we are part of. We're a tiny little dot on this huge expanse and spectrum of light and life and universe, and you just think, well, if we are accepted, if I am accepted, and I feel that, and I kind of know that in my being, then what about absolutely everything else? Of course it's absolutely loved and accepted and treasured, and yeah, I think it helps me to yeah, I suppose. Sorry, I'm on a bit of a waffle here, but I suppose where it brings me to is like a sense that the hell is something we experience internally, and something we experience when we are focused in the wrong place because we feel disconnected, we don't feel accepted, we don't feel like things are marrying up or matching up, and we feel disjointed and fractured. But that doesn't mean that we're not actually living in a space of great beauty, or and that all it is just a slight realignment, and we're in the place where we are supposed to be. So it feels like it's not like the gap doesn't feel insurmountable. and that it's that I suppose where I come to is that salvation is so possible because of God, because
Yeah.
we are not the ones in charge or making the rules.
Yeah, and I wonder if that links to the Easter story of, the God dying on the cross for us.
Mm,
There's that verse, isn't it, that there's no greater love than this, that you would die for somebody. That's a
yeah.
really bad translation, cut short, because I was
All
like,
right. Yeah.
how does it finish? But like I think for me that was always part of the cross. The story of the cross was this deep, deep passion and love that God has for humanity and for
Mm,
restoring all things. And we can argue how, what was the effect of it, what was the purpose of it,
mm,
and things. But
mm,
I think, and I think the Bible does this, that it is all about love.
yeah.
John's Gospels are all about the cross is about love,
Mm,
love of God, and that acceptance of where we're at, of who we are, and that valuing and cherishing of us. And but I was really struck by how you open that out into all things.
mm,
Um, and this switch from hell to heaven, or hell to new life, and it
yeah.
just reminded me. In my head, I just had Jesus, and it was
Mm,
just like, yeah, Jesus went to hell. As much if hell's a real place, I'm struggling with it, but
mm,
I love the idea of hell as something we experience on
mm,
earth, and this fragmentation and the divorce within,
yeah.
um, and that Jesus went there.
Mm,
That's the story of Easter, that Jesus died and went to hell and was raised again. And
mm,
that switch, all of a sudden, that he's not in the
mm,
tomb anymore, and that
yeah.
that and I love that you ended with salvation is so close, or salvation, like, I can't remember what you said actually, but
Yeah, becomes possible. No, I can't
yeah.
either. We're recording. It's fine.
We will go back, yeah. Um, but yeah, that that almost the Easter story is that salvation is so possible. I
Mm,
mean, it is really.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
can change how you define salvation, but I love that kind of. For me, I went to Jesus going to hell and rising to life again,
Mm,
and that's always been the path
mm,
of. There's another way to take the Easter story of it's the path of all new life, that all
mm,
new life must die and rise again.
mhm,
and
mhm.
and that's the path. That's the path of going from order to disorder to reorder, that
Yeah.
and at the cross, and on Saturday especially, where you did absolutely nothing but just wonder what on earth's happened, and
Yeah.
that's real disorder, isn't it? And then
Yeah.
suddenly there's glimmers
Chaos.
of
Yeah.
hope on Sunday morning. um
Yeah. I
yeah
love that. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's it. Is that it is just I started off, I was speaking about how it's sort of like foreshadowed in like the Old Testament with the Israelites, but actually it's foreshadowed and reflected and repeated throughout everywhere.
mm,
Um, we see it with like seeds when they like a seed
yeah
is it germinates, and the germination process is the seed dying and then a plant growing.
mm,
Um, yeah, and it's just in literally everything, and it's
yeah
amazing. Yeah, I love it.
yeah and in the sunrise.
And then sunrise, yeah,
Well,
exactly.
spring on a yearly thing, but just
Yeah,
the like the
yeah.
death of the sun and the new life
Yeah.
of the sun every
On
day.
macro and micro levels, it's
Yeah,
just incredible. Yeah, it's
yeah,
just incredible. Yeah, love it. I love it, and it kind of makes me think. Okay, maybe the sense of order and disorder, and the fact that don't feel reordered. Yeah, I don't feel reordered yet, is part of that, and it is more cyclical. It is a bit more of a flow of like, well, part of it does feel reordered, part of it still feels a bit chaotic, and then some days that part will feel a bit reordered, and the other bit will feel a bit in disarray.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does
Yeah.
flow. It certainly flows. Yeah.
And that can be really short cycle, which
Yeah.
is great because I find myself on that journey every day.
Yeah.
But it's also long cycle,
Yeah.
and you think across our lifespan a bit more in our journey of faith.
Mm.
You can paint the broad brushstrokes. Yeah, and I guess for me this Easter I was feeling a lot in the disorder,
Mm.
not just in faith but in a variety of things that have happened, and I've just had I've got a 6-month baby, which disorders
Yeah.
everything. So that's probably
There you
part of
go.
it. But that there were firstly that Saturday was okay. That Saturday was part of the plan of that place where you've got no idea what's happening, and a place, and also it was like forced. It was so it's the Sabbath. So like they were forced to just stay still and do nothing apart from stuck in their confusion and hurt and grief and bewilderment, and then of hope. I think of the new morning, and it was just like glimmers of hope. I feel
Yeah.
in the Easter story, like they didn't see there was nobody in the grave, but they didn't really, like, it was just like glimmers, and then just a woman was told. In that time, women's
Yeah.
testimony wasn't much, so
Yeah.
it's just like, and I think that's what I took. I think from this Easter was the glimmers of hope that in my own journey. Yeah,
And I think that's it. Yeah. I think that's what I'm clinging to as well. A bit is glimmers of hope. That every now and then I just get like no, it's still there. God is still here. He's still got me. It's all right. It's gonna be okay.
yeah.
And it's reassuring. Yeah, it's reassuring.
I think we're at time, James.
Yeah, it's a great place to leave it.
Yeah, I think so.
I think so.
I love it. Thanks again, James.
No problem at all. Thank you.
Yeah, have you got anything left you'd like to say?
Not that can top that. That's great. We've ended on a spot on note. Really.
Great. Yeah. Take care. Yeah, take care, guys. Have a great week. Thanks for tuning in. And we'll see you next Tuesday at 7:30.
Yeah.